Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very glad you're with us today. It's October 6th, 2021. For those on Zoom, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just enter them into the chat window. For those on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2008, I started a website called Career DFW to help those who were unemployed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I launched a second website, careerusa.org, to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It is available on Amazon. Since 2007, I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team. We have two speakers who are going to be presenting today. Mark McDonald, who runs the interview success practice interview team, and Walt Glass, who leads the interview success workshop. This presentation is recorded, and if you have any questions, we'll take those questions at the end of the presentation.
All right, Jeff. Well, thanks for that introduction. So I'm Mark McDonald. I've been leading the pit crew since 2014, and that happenstance occurred because I was laid off 3 times between 2002 and 2012, late 2012. So in early 2013, I became a volunteer for the pit crew, and then early 2014, I became the leader. And it's been a great journey helping people, and I hope you take advantage of what we have to offer. And since I always forget to say this, I'm going to say first, it's absolutely free. Everything the pit crew does is absolutely free, and it is what it says. We give you an opportunity to practice your interviewing, but it's a very specific, personalized and customized interview. It's based on a job description that you provide and your resume. And, we try to do the best we can to mimic a real interview. And that includes everybody who interviews you. All the volunteers at the pit crew have been hiring managers. So they've all done this as part of their professional responsibility. And furthermore, they've all been in job transition. Some are currently working. Many are in job transition, just like you. And many have retired after being off, for example, after being laid off for 3 times. That would be me. So that's what the pit crew is all about. So it's a very empathetic group. We've been in your shoes, a very professional group, because we're all hiring managers. And you get the personalized and customized practice experience based on the information that you provide. So when you're ready to practice, you just need to send that information to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Everything the pit crew does starts with dallaspitcrew@gmail.com. Include your resume, your job description, and when you'd be available in +2 days and +3 days. And I'll go to work setting up a practice interview. We do them on every day of the week. We use the Zoom technology. You'll get a recording of the interview and the feedback that you receive afterwards. So it's a great deal, and I encourage you to practice early and practice often, which means you can practice as many times as you like. Some people practice for every round of an important interview. Some people don't show up until the 2nd or 3rd round. Some people come and practice even though they do not have an interview scheduled, and that's great. That's fantastic, because you don't want anything that some misconception that you have about interviewing to cause you to fail in an opportunity. So you can practice before you even have an important opportunity in hand. So that's the pit crew. And we also give, there we go, LinkedIn profile. I've included that. Right now, I'm going to put some information in the chat window, and you can click on that. That's my LinkedIn profile. Just include a note that says we met on Interview Wednesday. That's good enough for me. But I do like to see that note so I know, where we engaged. And then the pit crew also offers one-way interviews. And if you would like to understand how this works, just send me an email, dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and say I'm interested in practicing a one-way interview, and I'll set that up for you. We use a tool called Easy Hire, which has been donated to Jeff. And my version of the practice interview of the practice one-way interview is just practice. I give you the questions in advance, and you just practice interacting with the tool, and then you can look at yourself afterwards with the recording. It's just you and the tool. After you rake your request, I set up the links, and it's just you and the tool. Nobody else sees it. So if you're interested in that, send me an email, and I'll send you some more details about how to make it happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, Walt.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I heartily recommend that you do mock interviews with the pit crew. I also strongly suggest that before you do that, you figure out what are the basics and fundamentals of selling in an interview and differentiation between you and those other candidates. So I offer the Interview Success Workshop. This is a very informal workshop. Focus is on learning that differentiation and how to sell three things: who we are, what we do, and how we can help. With those elements and those fundamentals, I cover 11 basic categories of questions. So it's a choppy interview. It's really not smooth. It's not meant to be smooth. It's not to look like a real interview. It's to look like the fundamentals of learning how we can be effective in that interview. So you get to interview each other, you get a video, I take notes, and then we discuss the responses. And we look at strategies, options, perhaps some structures and ways that we can answer questions in a lot different way, in a better way than most candidates do. For example, I hear a lot of closings that say, "Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I look forward to hearing from you soon." And I've never heard a real salesperson in life close in that manner. That is not a close to an interview. That's not closing the deal. It's not closing the sale. So how do we go about doing that? Anyway, I'll be glad to have you register. Look me up on LinkedIn under Walt Glass. Gives you information there. Send an email to my Yahoo email address, and I'll give you some dates. I normally hold them on Tuesdays from 10 to 12, and if demand goes higher, then I'll schedule some different ones. It goes 2 hours in each one of those cases. So come on down. You don't have to sit in the hot seat. You don't have to sit there and sweat. You don't have to sit there and worry about what your future is going to be. It's all about learning. So come on down and we can have some learning without squirming. It's also free.
Thank you, Walt. All right. Well, today we're on session number 10, building rapport, how to establish chemistry with the interviewer. So gentlemen, please take it away.
And so today is session number 10, building rapport with the interviewer. I remember when we used to meet face-to-face, we talk about this after the interviews were done, but it was really very unstructured. So this was an opportunity when we put this course together to, put together a whole hour of information about how you build rapport during the interview. Now this fits into the context of the whole 13 series that we teach, and all of these are available on Jeff's Career USA YouTube channel. And today it's session number 10. So you can see, 9 sessions have come before, and we have 3 more to go. There's the list. If you think about it, the structure of it, the first 5 are all about preparing to interview, and those are the ones you should focus on if you're brand new to the job search. The second 5 are all about effective interviewing. And so we're wrapping up the series 5 topics: openings and closings, and discussing compensation and all that. Today, that's effective interviewing. And then next week are some advanced topics. Next 3 weeks, informational interviews and difficult interviewers and their difficult questions, and avoiding interview crashes. The format today is Walt's going to go first, and then I'll go.
Well, let's talk about building rapport. So what is it, first of all? Well, it's a connection between 2 people, right? It's spoken and unspoken things that say we're kind of on the same page. And if you think of it this way, it's really an art of making somebody feel comfortable and accepted. That's pretty strong. It takes a little bit of effort and wisdom and some practice to do that. Some of us pretty natural at it, but nonetheless, we meet all different kinds of people in the interview process. So feeling how we can make them feel comfortable is important. And so what do we need to know? Well, really, we knew how to connect with others, all right? And it doesn't matter about age, gender, ethnic background, mood, situation, etc. It said, how do we do that? And so that falls under the term of what we call emotional intelligence. That's coming up quite a bit now in job descriptions as some of the soft skills. So let me just spend a second on what emotional intelligence is. The short definition is really, I'm able to read other people, find out what motivates them and blocks them. So understanding others, where they're coming from. You know, a lot of conversations, what you're coming from and your experience, your background and your thoughts and the pictures in your mind are not the same as the thoughts and pictures and ideas in the other person's mind. And so I used to, in leadership development, in my years in leadership development, teaching communication, it was like a miracle if you could get something accurately communicated between two people because of where we just think differently. But once we kind of understand them, then we understand their perspective, understand how they see things, how they feel about things, we can adjust our behavior. You know, I've thought about, you know, if you want to change the world, well, I'm gonna have a hard time changing the world, but I can change the world by changing myself. And then if I change myself, I will have participated in changing the world. So focusing on other people, what are the words they're saying? What kind of behavior are they showing? What is it that we can do? And does it match us to be genuine and interested in having them feel good, safe, and enthusiastic? Say, hey, I'd like you to come work here, right? A lot of good things can happen if people are thinking about, you're the kind of person I like to work with. Gives you a real strong advantage for finding something. May not be the job that you're actually looking for. It might be something different or something bigger or whatever it might be. But they will work to find a place for us. So I talked about the I am, I do, and I help in an interview. So we talk about, from our perspective, who we are, what we do, and how we help. But what about them? Who are they? What do they do, and how do they help? Where do they fit into that pattern? So understanding them along those three terms is pretty important as we try to build rapport in an interview. So if we want to build relationships, who do we want to build relationships with? Well, in the job search mode, it's good to rub noses and shake hands and know people and have discussions and conversations with inspirational people. I mean, the job search is a downer most of the time. It's struggle, it's rough, you have ups and downs, you think you're going to get the job and you don't. But inspirational people can keep us motivated, give us more energy. Who are the key stakeholders? Who are the decision makers? What possible connections would be the ones that are important to help us reach the goal that we've set for ourselves? So interviewers and hiring managers are certainly the people that we want to build relationships with. Some people say it's the likability factor, which is kind of a one-word summary of a lot of different things. Do they like us? Do they like that? Well, first of all, do they like who you are? If they don't like who you are, the rest of it doesn't really matter. But if they like what you do and the activities and the task and how you go about doing them and the processes you use, and particularly, do they like that you are achievement driven, that you are results oriented, that what makes you happy about a job isn't necessarily finishing a project, it's the results of the project that really drives you. That kind of talk is a lot different. So who am I? I'm the kind of person who likes to achieve these results doing these tasks using these types of skills, these soft skills. Employers are always asking this, basically in an interview. Their objective is, can we do the job and will we do the job? I used to call that the Can He Willie principle. Can this person do the job? Many candidates can do the job. Many can. But the question is, do they exhibit characteristics that show that they will do the job? If it's just a job you can do, but it's not one that energizes you, you will come across different in an interview than if this is one that energizes you. Will you be a good team and cultural fit? Very critical and very important. Can they manage us and can they afford us? So those are the kind of things they're trying to look for and answer. If we can build a rapport and them have a good feeling about those answers, that's very, very positive. So in a nutshell, rapport is about feelings. It's an emotional thing. You don't build rapport psychologically. You don't build it mentally. You don't build it with skills necessarily. It's a combination of things that I have a good feeling about a candidate. Your attitude and your feelings are important. Would you agree that we kind of like people that are kind of familiar with us, think like us a little bit, have some of the same values that we have, are looking for someone that says, I enjoy talking with you. I had a date and I told the person I enjoyed talking with them at the end of the phone, and they were insulted because it sounded like, I enjoyed talking with you. Really, my message was, I enjoyed talking to you, okay? But it didn't come quite across that way. So I didn't demonstrate enough during that conversation to convince them that I really enjoyed it. So that was the difference. So I changed my ways. So when a report is good, the similarities are emphasized and the differences are minimized. I like the positives. I like the things. And if you don't have all the requirements and you don't have that, well, that's okay. We can teach you those. We can figure out how to resolve that. So some of the requirements are relaxed when they find somebody who would really be a good person to work with. And also, if you don't have some rapport, how can you have a successful communication? So it's one of the elements to help us communicate effectively. So how do we do that? Well, we need to find the company and engage on current issues. So we need to get armed with some information to prepare so that we can accomplish building that rapport. Want to find something in common with that person. So who you're talking to, research them. Finding something in common is huge. It really makes an immediate and instant connection. And of course, your first impressions count. So we've got sessions on the opening, we've got sessions on preparation and things like that, where how the opening and that statement of enthusiasm is very, very critical. But how you look, your clothes, hair, expressions, etc. How do we stand and sit? How do we walk? I thought something was pretty good because in the military, in the basic combat training, they teach cadets how to walk with purpose. So when you walk with purpose. And I thought that was a great expression. So that when others see you walking, how are you walking in? Are you dragging or are you working in with purpose? So how we shake hands makes a difference, and how we smile. Smiling is huge. It's a great initial starter for building rapport is to smile. And of course, that statement of enthusiasm, which I mentioned. We have to take a genuine interest in this, all right? If it's not genuine, it's fake it, that's not gonna work. It's not gonna come across well. So we wanna focus on building connection, not only just answering questions, but focus on what do we do in an interview that will build that connection. What if you saw them as just an important guest in our home? When my wife was president, I lost her a few years back, but she could be talking and she was not really happy with me. She'd say, I wish you wouldn't do that, something like that. The phone would ring and her demeanor and voice and attitude changed immediately. Just clicked the switch and she was so friendly and so nice. And I said, gee whiz, strangers get more help, more appreciation than I do. Okay. But nonetheless, as an important guest, one way to visualize that person as a guest, not an interviewer. Remember Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that came out several years ago. That habit 5 says, seek first to understand, then be understood. So listening and being a good listener is important. Now, how do you demonstrate being a good listener? Well, we nod, we smile, we make a comment, we agree, we can do things that say, I like what you say, that indicates that. When has an interviewer ever gotten a compliment in an interview? Very, very rare. Let's give you an example. I've heard many, many times when the question is asked, the person says, that's a good question. How many times do you think Mark and I have heard, that's a good question after a question? Tons of times, tons of times. but it's so often used, it does not come across as effective, right? So instead of saying that's a good question, you can say something like, I'm really glad that you asked that particular question. I think that is a key element for someone to be successful in this role. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Interviewers rarely get that. Some of them don't deserve it, but it's got to be when they deserve it, when they truly are doing that. So be genuine with it, but give them a compliment. Very, very strong differentiator, a very positive, good feeling. A sense of humor, not jokes, but a sense of humor. And my problem is I have a great sense of humor, except I'm the only one that thinks it's funny. So the rule is they've got to think it's funny too. So you got to know a little bit about them before you throw out some humor, right? You got to kind of test the waters, see what that, if they are kind of humorous and they do some things, then perhaps it's okay for us, but don't just jump in there with the humor. Here's some things to avoid. Boy, today, you want to talk about politics? I'm so tired of politics. I don't want to talk to anybody about politics. But we don't want to talk about things that are controversial, could cause problems, cause issues. So stay away from those. So instead, we stick with topics that are basically focused on the industry, the organization, and the role. All your interviewing should be focused on the customer or the client or the organization, the interviewer themselves, the task, the role, all that sort of thing is focused. And some people say, well, should I start opening out with some personal information? And I recommend that you don't start with personal information. You start with business information. And if they ask for something personal, then you can focus a little bit on that. Anyway, displaying interest. How do we do that? So smile. Smiling is huge. One of the presentations, I give a lot of pictures and say, which one do you like the best? And one is a smiling baby. And the majority like the smiling baby. And so I ask this to you, who does not get a good feeling from a smiling baby? I mean, it is just universal that it makes us feel good when we see a baby smile. Well, it makes others feel good also. There is actually a physical reaction when we smile that makes us feel better, makes them feel better. They usually will smile back, and then we get double the treatment. So smiling is very, very positive, genuine though. Establish and maintain eye contact. Now online, that means look at the camera while speaking like I'm doing. I can't stand it anymore. I'll be so glad to get back. I'm tired of looking at this little spot on my PC, which we look at the camera. And when they're talking, we can look at them. But to make eye contact online, you have to be looking into the camera. So be the first to say hello. When you do the greeting, speak first. Come out and say that. Hi, whatever. Don't wait for them to speak. Introduce yourself. Be a little aggressive. Be a little different than the other people. Have that warm smile. Show that interest. Give that statement of enthusiasm. Sincere statement of enthusiasm and greeting that show that you are interested. Use their name. Okay. If they call you by first name, you might have a feeling that you can call them by first name. You don't want to be careful about that. It also depends on what you know about them. So do your research on people so that you can understand how friendly they are. I have one person in the practice interview say, here's an example greeting. And I say, oh, I am excited to be here. It's great to meet you, Mark, because we've already introduced ourselves and know the names. I'm excited to be here, and I look forward to having a conversation. I believe I can really make a significant contribution to the team. He immediately said, I would never say that. And he used the tone and the face and everything that I just said back. That person never smiled during the interview. The reason that he said he wouldn't say that was that it was beneath him to say that. He was an operations executive. He made the company go. That's what he did. And I said, I wonder why you left your last job, because he was not friendly, sincere throughout the whole process. And I think he thought it was a total waste of time to come to the workshop. So he's been my one and only time when someone was just not ready, not seeing the other person's point of view, etc. It was very, very different. Kind of made the room brighter after he left. So match and mirror. Well, this is I put that in there because a lot of people use this matching and mirroring thing, and using some neuro-linguistics programming on whether you look up to the left and up to the right and down, left and right, all that sort of thing, what it means. And that can have some value. But if you match and mirror and you keep doing that for a while, you're going to get into trouble. So I just put in the little notes. I'm not really a big fan of doing that one. Engage. This is key too. Engage. How do we engage? We ask open-ended questions to encourage conversation and discover our commonalities. How do we build rapport with a person we don't know? I mean, I don't know how we could do that. So we got to find out that I am, I do, I help, and they are, they do, and they help, right? And star stories. Star stories are huge as well, because when a person tells a star story, the other person puts themselves in it, identifies with it, and lives the experience with you. I use the example of one of the Mission Impossible movies where here we are. He's hanging out of a window. He's in Dubai, this tall hotel, and I don't know, it's 1,000 feet or something to the floor. And I'm laying back in my easy chair watching the movie, and I'm scared to death. Heights and me don't get along, particularly that high. And so, but I involve myself, I identify with that character. Well, the same thing happens in a star story. And as you go through it with them, that's an emotional connection as well as a logical connection. So you get to tell the story, but you get to build that emotional connection too. So how you tell it makes a huge difference. If you tell it with some sincerity, you tell it with some fun, or you tell it with some excitement, or you tell it with something that you enjoyed and love to do, that will also help convey those feelings to your interviewer. So remember this, the aim of building rapport in an interview is to show that we really think along the same lines. We are similar, we have a professional outlook in our way of working. So it kind of sums up to one thing with likability, which is defined by all the things that I've been talking about in those previous slides. Other applicants can have similar skills and experience, but how are we different? What's the differentiators? It's our presentation, our communication skills, our personality, our characteristics, how we communicate, the approach that we take. You've often heard it say that the best qualified person doesn't necessarily get the job. And that's true. I firmly believe it's the best interviewer that gets the job. Just about everyone that's qualified. How are we going to be different? One last thought, just don't forget, while we're building rapport, we're also there to prove that we can do the job too. Okay, Mark.
Okay, so here's my part about building rapport. And last week we talked about demonstrating enthusiasm, and those are connected. Rapport is more outbound, right? About building a relationship with someone else. It's identifying or realizing that you have a connection, that you understand how they think, or they understand how you think. That generates trust, a common understanding, a common point of view. Sometimes it happens naturally, and you probably had this happen in an interview situation. You just seem to click, and you have a good discussion. But there are things you can do to help that along. Walt's already talked about some, and I'll add to that and probably repeat some of it as well. But it's all very important. Now, being enthusiastic is more internal. It's showing interest in the things that you do and getting pleasure from doing them. So when you do, if you are talking to someone who has a similar enthusiasm for the work that they do, then being enthusiastic is going to say, they're going to say, that person's just like me, because I really enjoy my work as well. So they're connected, no doubt. Being enthusiastic and building rapport are connected. But there's also a difference, right? Two sides of the same coin. So last week we talked about enthusiasm, this week about building rapport. Now, if you want to, you can just Google, how do you build rapport in an interview, and you're going to get some information. And let me just go over that. And, you know, I did put this together, I don't know, a few months ago, and it ended up being a lot of text. And I didn't really simplify it, but there's going to be a lot of text here. This is probably something you could read and get a lot out of it, but I'll add some additional comments. So the first thing to do is to, you know, follow the lead of the interviewer. Okay, if the interviewer is not a talkative type of person, then, you know, trying to strike up some small talk is going to fall flat, right? So you got to get a sense of how they like to operate. And there's a tool you can use to look at their LinkedIn profile and analyze it. I don't remember what session we talked about it in, Walt can remember, called Crystal Knows, and it does a DISC assessment of them, DISC, which is a personality assessment of them based on the words they choose to use in their LinkedIn profile. So another example of artificial intelligence, and it seems to work pretty well. And so then you can get some idea in it. And then since it's a LinkedIn tool, it takes the next step and it tells you how you should interact with this person based on the analysis of their writing, basically the words they choose to use. So that can be helpful to, if you know the interviewer, who it is in advance, and you look on their LinkedIn profile. But barring, maybe you don't have that, you're going to have to get some sense. Okay, so get some sense of, are they all business? Is there room for some social interaction? And there's a clue on how long your interview is scheduled for. And I'd say if your interview is scheduled for an hour or more, then there's going to be time and probably some desire to have more of a conversation and get to know each other better and build that emotional connection. So more chance to have rapport than if it's a 30-minute or even a 45-minute interview. That could just be an all business interview. So be aware of that before you go in. Answering questions and then asking questions is a really good way to build rapport. And so this can be a back and forth thing, what I call, Jack Bick, I think, calls pop-up questions. So they ask you a question and that generates a follow-up question with you. You don't want to use that too often. But asking questions in general, especially at the beginning, to understand what they really need, how you can help them, that demonstrates your interest and can draw, make a connection between you and the interviewer, because when they realize that you are, hyper focused on how you can help them, it will really improve their perspective on your candidacy. Okay. Now, it can be appropriate to talk about hobbies or common interest. And Walt already mentioned, stay away from politics and religion. But if you, go to their Facebook page and see pictures of them playing tennis, you might just mention in your introduction that if you play tennis, if it's true, that you play tennis as well. They may or may not react to this, but it's just planting a little seed that, you and the interviewer are not that different. You both like to do something. You might see them, on the lake, or you might see them, I don't know, riding a bicycle. That's what you can glean from looking at some of their pictures on Facebook. And so that's a topic, something you can just mention kind of in passing. You can include it in your opening statement. When we talk about the opening statement in session 6, I suggest that you just put one little personal tidbit in your opening statement, because it's really more, as Walt said, more about your ability to help them in a professional sense. But it doesn't hurt to humanize yourself a little bit by mentioning something that you're interested in doing outside of work. And if the interviewer has the similar avocation, then you built some rapport. Walt mentioned this as well, active listening. So you exercise those skills. They want to see, and that you're really interested and focused on them. And I think all of these are mostly duplicates. You got a first impression. Still, even in the virtual world, you have a first impression when you first pop up. Listening skills, finding a common ground, shared experiences, be empathetic. I think Walt calls this emotional intelligence, but you can be empathetic around other things, especially I think when you talk about being laid off, this is actually another good way to demonstrate business acumen. But employers, hiring managers, at least I can speak for myself, I like to hire people who understood the bigger picture, right? The bigger picture is what's the financial environment, the industry environment, the regulatory environment that they're working in. And so that gives them a little more understanding when things have to change, up to and including things, staff has to be reduced. And so when you talk about why you left your last job, why you got laid off because of COVID, you can say things like the company, needed to lay me off because business was not strong enough to continue to support my location. When you say the word, unfortunately, I got laid off, that's a trigger word for me. Who's it unfortunate for? If I'm the hiring manager, it might be the most fortunate thing that ever happened to me is getting you on my team. But you get an opportunity to demonstrate empathy. And I got some other examples in here about demonstrating empathy. And Walt also talk about mirror and match mannerism. So like if you go to the internet, this is what you're going to see. I don't recommend you even attempt to do that. If it happens, if you notice it happening, that's great. When you start to get aligned with people, you naturally do this. Most people do, I think. So, and so that means some people have trained themselves to fake it. And as Walt said, that if that's discovered, it's very bad. it'll make the interviewer angry, and that'll be the end of your chances. So I don't recommend you even try. Just realize that it's a thing. And when you start to if it starts to happen, then you know that you're starting to make a deeper connection with that person. Okay, so let's talk about some specifics, building rapport in a short interview, okay? So the byline here is be intentional about building rapport with the interviewer. So you're gonna do specific things that enhance your ability to build rapport. And so the first one is arrive well prepared. Okay, this shows respect for the interviewer's time. And so that's being empathetic. It's not all about you and your opportunity, it's about them and how you can help them. And arriving prepared on time is empathetic to, they're busy people and they need to get someone hired to help them out. They need help. And that's you. You're Johnny on the spot. So well prepared means have some work product that you can share, okay? And we talk about this in other sessions, so I'm not going to go in any depth. Have your cover letter that the T cover letter that says you need and I have, identifies your experience based on analysis of the job description, your prioritized list of questions that you'd like to ask, your resume, you've got it handy, the job description, and something to take notes on. And in the virtual world, I recommend you just say, as early as you can in the interview that, I have a few things here because, we may need to refer to them. So I have some work product I'd like to share with you if there's time. I have the cover letter that I did the analysis of the job description on. I have my questions, my resume, and the job description. So just verbalize that you have it there. They obviously can't see it. And there you go. You kind of told them that you've done a lot of homework and you're well prepared. So right then and there, based on what you did before the interview, you can start to build rapport with the interviewer. Now, questions about your enthusiasm or your motivation to pursue this position may not be voiced, okay? And I was one of the, I never asked people, why do you want this job? Why are you interested in coming to work for XYZ Corp? At the end of the interview, I'd make some assessment about their motivation or their interest in the position based on the totality of the interview, right? So, but I recommend now that you just get ahead of that question because every hiring manager is wondering about that. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? Can I manage you? These are the things that Walt mentioned. So go ahead and tell them right up front. Tell them why you have enthusiasm for the job, why you have enthusiasm for the company, and how it kind of fits into the arc of your career. And we cover that and openings and closings, which is session 6. So if you want to go review that, take a look at session 6. But that's getting ahead of the game. That's anticipating that, you know, the concern they may have or the question they may have in their mind, that you start to address it before they even ask about it. Okay. Anticipation is a strong way to build rapport. Okay. Anticipating, knowing what they're thinking and answering it before they even ask it is a great way to build rapport. So your statement of enthusiasm, to go and take a look at session 6. I'll cover this really briefly. Should answer the question, why are you interested in this job? And so this is like the first thing out of your mouth. It can be part of your greeting as well. And then you have an opening statement that follows next. About 70% of the time, you're going to get a chance to make an opening statement. And so you're going to talk about 3 achievements that you believe they're going to be very interested in hearing about that are based on the job description. So you need to prioritize the top 3 things you think there are issues that they need help with based on the job description and any other research you might have done. But right up front, you're going to try to tell them, I know what you need and I am able to help and I enjoy doing it. Okay. Now, you may guess wrong, you may not have it right. So right after that, you're going to start asking the clarifying questions about what that person perceives as the most important priority. But right here now, you're making a strong attempt to connect with them through your work experience to things they need help with. Okay, so you've invested some time, some effort, some analysis, maybe some informational interviews with other people in the company to make this a really strong introduction. And, you know, that'll go a long way for building towards generating rapport with the interviewer. Okay. You're having a mind meld. And I think I just mentioned these. Session 5 talks about analyzing the job description. Session 6, openings and closings. And session 11 will be next week, but you can go and look at the one we did in April, informational interviews. Okay, star stories. So creating a shared experience through your story, and you know, especially stories about successes. Hiring managers have had their successes, and stories about difficult times. Okay, those can be really, I think, an opportunity to build some rapport. How did you get through a difficult time? Sometimes the question comes, you know, tell me about a time that you failed. Tell me about a project that didn't meet its goals. They'll ask you, and you get all worried. You know, they want to know how I screwed up something. But it's also an opportunity to say how you got through it and into a learning experience. And that's a great way to, you know, have a resonant moment, so to speak, with the hiring manager, because everybody, or the interview doesn't have to be the hiring manager, because everybody's had those things in their careers, and some of them got through them well and some of them didn't get through them well, but they've all, you know, been in those anxious moments when things were going south. And how did you get through that? How did you get through that? Also, being able to tell these stories with brevity. I think I got that on the next, if I click one more time. Yeah, being able to tell these stories with brevity. Okay, so let's say it's not a negative story, it's a positive story, or it's a question about using some skill, especially a soft skill. Being very focused and brief builds your expertise, you know, the perception of your expertise and your effective communication skills. Okay, so there's another good way to build rapport. Answer the question, you know, can I manage this person? Are they going to come into my office and spend an hour, you know, telling me this long-winded story when it could have taken 10 minutes? So right in the interview, you're demonstrating your expertise by being brief and to the point, and your communication skills. Okay. After you tell the story, you may want to ask a question to glean some information from them. So getting them to talk in a focused way. So who was it? Brian asked this question about unfocused interviewers. So we're going to address that here at the end. But so maybe in an unfocused interview, you don't want to ask them a question if they can't, give a focused response. But assuming, the interviewer, is focused, then getting them to talk about their issues, getting them to talk is going to build rapport, right? People like to talk about themselves. Now, this has to be measured, and in a 30 and 40 or 45-minute interview, you don't want to ask a whole lot of questions because you don't know how long the interview is going to take to answer. And that time may eat into your time to talk about how you can be of help. But 1 or 2 attempts at this during a practice interview, during a 30 or 45-minute interview could be a very effective way to build rapport, okay? Brevity is always better. So we talked about having 90 seconds to tell a star story. If you can tell it in less, or you can answer a question and just a direct question in less, then brevity is always better, okay? Builds trust that you have mastery of the topic. Okay, when you get a chance to ask questions, you want to personalize them, okay? Not just a question like, here's a generic question, what are the characteristics required to be successful in this role? It's a good question. That's very generic. You might say instead, from your perspective, what are the characteristics required, so on and so forth, to be successful in this role? Another personalized question, which was invented by one of our sales professionals who came through the pit crew, is they would always ask relatively early in the process, did you write the job description? Is this a document that you offered? Most of the time, the answer is no. Okay, they did not. They're not the originator of that job description. So there's the opportunity to say, so what is most important to you for this role? What is most important to you for this role? That's a very personalized question. Okay, and doesn't have to be the hiring manager. You can ask anyone this question, anyone that you interview with, okay? Because it's not, what does it take to be hired here? It's from your perspective, what's most important to you for this role? Great way to build rapport. Now, during a pause in the conversation, it's a good opportunity to show your enthusiasm by offering to tell an achievement story. Would you like to hear about a time where I, saved the company $1 million by doing X, Y, and Z? So you offer up the result first. And so if there were, let's say you analyzed the job description and you figured out what you thought were the top 3 items, but it's a really long job description, and number 4, number 5, number 6, you're not quite so sure about. You may not even be all that sure about 1, 2, and 3. So you can start throwing out during the interview other kind of leading questions when there's a pause, other kind of leading questions, fishing for, so to speak, what's going to resonate with them. If you hit upon something that, if you ask a question before, let's say it was on their list, they were going to ask you about this, but you bring it up ahead of time, that's another good way to build rapport. It goes to that, mind meld. We got a mind meld going on here. This candidate is answering the questions before I even get a chance to ask them, okay? Now, you can also, as an alternative to offering an achievement, because you can overuse these techniques, you can ask a kind of a neutral question. So, and I put neutral in quotes because it's not a neutral question, it's a leading question. A neutral question is not supposed to have any bias. It's not supposed to influence the person being asked the question about their answer, but this is kind of the opposite of that. It's a pseudo neutral question. The point here is you want to keep it simple, no compound questions, just a kind of a direct question. And so here's an example. What do you think? What do you think? That's the key word. What do you think about using Agile Scrum methodology to improve factory efficiency? So now you're asking them to share with you, and assuming this is a new idea, okay? This is not something they do. But it also needs to be something that you have some expertise in. Maybe you've done this someplace else and it doesn't appear in the job description, but you think they could benefit from this because there's probably going to boomerang on you, which is what you really want to happen. You've got 2 things here. You want to hear what the interviewer says. It's an opportunity for them to talk with you and for you to gather information, but it's also an opportunity for them to reflect back to you. Well, what do you think about it? And then you can tell a story that shows how you used it effectively in the past, and get a conversation going about whether that would fit in this role or in this company if it's something they might be interested in doing. And so now, if you're successful at this, you brought up something that they hadn't thought about before that could be helpful. Okay, that's very powerful. And asking for feedback. I think this is the last one I got. Asking for feedback at the end of the interview is a kind of a scary thing, because you might not get positive feedback, but it's the best time you're going to get feedback. And asking for feedback is a very endearing quality. When people want to be better and they ask you for your advice or your assessment of them, it might be hard to hear, but you want to hear it, and you can pay it, so asking for feedback, I think you could think about this. If you were an interviewer and someone, a candidate you had to evaluate, and they asked for feedback, what would you think? And a very simple way to ask for feedback is not very confrontational, is just, how do you see me fitting in? How do you see me fitting in? There's more deeper ways you can, a more kind of probing way to ask would be, is there anything we discussed today that would keep you from recommending me for the next step? Okay, so now you're asking for anything specific, any objection they may not have voiced. And if they'll answer that question, and maybe most of the time they won't, but if they will, then you get a chance to counter that objection. But even if they don't, I think asking for feedback is a very positive thing. It's a very positive state of mind to be in. Some things you can do to spoil rapport is asking closed-in question. A closed-in question is a yes/no question, or give me a number question. You want to ask open-ended questions. Questions that don't have an obvious answer. That it depends on their perspective, what comes back to you. Just like they ask you open-ended questions, you want to ask open-ended questions as well. Refusing, which includes avoiding or forgetting to answer a question. Now, when we interview kind of senior level candidates in the PIT group, oftentimes they get asked compound questions, because compound questions are pretty tough. You got to remember the first question and you got to remember the second question. And a lot of the time people forget to answer the second question. So that's a little more advanced interview technique. And so it's incumbent on you not to forget to answer a question. So that's when you can make a note. They ask you a compound question, sometimes there are even 3 parts. You need to jot down, so you make sure you come back and answer all 3 questions. Redirecting. Oh yeah, so if they ask you a question that you don't have a good answer for, then or let's say you don't have the relevant experience, then you want to answer with an adjacent example, right? So they may say, do you know how to use this tool? And you may say, well, I have a lot of experience with this related tool, and I'm looking forward to learning more about the tool that they mentioned. And so that's an adjacent example. And you basically answer that question by saying how quickly you've learned to use another tool, or how deeply you understand a different tool that's related. So just don't refuse to answer the question. That's the point. And don't ask questions that you could answer yourself if you've done enough research, or done some research, or any research, right? So don't answer questions that are readily available on their website. Don't miss the opportunity to query, if there's a recruiter involved, to ask them a lot of questions, so you don't have to use up time during the interview getting answers to basic questions. You can focus on explaining how you can help and building rapport. That's what you want to do. All right, yeah, I forgot about the poll. I put the star in the wrong place. Okay, well, after the poll, we have the great video that well, Scott, here we go. So here's what we want to know. And so you have to be an interviewer here, and we've talked about a lot of things today. So from the interviewer's perspective and your perspective as an interviewer, what are your top 3 impact items for a candidate to build rapport? What are the top 3 impact items if you were interviewing a candidate to build rapport?
So on
And
the
then
poll, you
Walt
can
and I
be-
will share our selections with you.
And for those watching on Facebook, you can just type in, pick 3 letters and put them in the chat.
So I think an interesting thing to think about this is which you may have answered the question this way, but which three would you use? Which 3 do you feel the most? This is not another poll question, but this is a reflect upon this. What 3 of these would you use? Do you think you could use effectively? Because some of them you may find more daunting than others, but just answer that for yourself. And so my top 3 were C, enthusiasm, D, asking personalized questions, and F, sharing a common experience or star story. Well, what were yours?
Mine were B, C, and D, the common ground, and I kind of throw in F as part of the common ground, common experience, telling a story. That's very important. But anyway, something in common is a huge connector. And if you can find out something in common before you actually go in to meet that person, that would be, I think, a good one. And you could kind of bring that up in the very beginning in that opening, which is A, which is also good and important. The enthusiasm and interest, I've asked many people what part of the hiring decision is made on enthusiasm and interest in the company, the job, and it's always over 50%. So it's a huge differentiator and a strong rapport builder. And then asking personalized questions. My reasoning for that is, if you can't find out about them and find out something from them, how can you build a rapport? We can't. It's not easy to build just by answering questions and not talking to them, but finding out about them personally. How would you describe yourself? What do other people say about you is I think a good question. Or if you're in a team interview, you say, how would you describe your manager? To find out. And of course, Crystal knows might give you some information on that as well. But nonetheless, those are my 3.
Yeah, I think I
All
didn't.
good.
Yeah, I didn't pick A as one of my 3, but I think a opening statement, getting a good start, getting off on the right foot, anticipating what their most important requirements are, and then asking to clarify gets you. It's just, you can start building rapport immediately, and that just builds as the interview goes on. So that's a good one as well.
Mrs. Carruthers, welcome.
Thank you.
Come on in, have a
Thanks for
seat.
having me.
Of course. I have been looking over your resume, and I have to say I am very impressed.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I think, to be honest, you are overqualified to be an accountant.
Oh, well, that's okay. I don't intend to work very hard.
Really?
Absolutely. In fact, I only intend to show up when I feel like it, which is good because I have a wide variety of extremely annoying personal habits and absolutely no sense of hygiene.
Oh. Then I don't feel like you're then the correct person for this position.
That's okay. I quit.
Yeah, you can't quit. You don't work here.
Like I would ever work here.
Like we would ever hire you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And even if you did work here, I would even give you the opportunity to quit because I would fire you.
Well, you can't fire me because I don't work here.
That's right. You don't, and I would can your ass so quick.
Prove it.
Okay. You've got the job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And now it is my pleasure to inform you that
I quit.
You can't quit. I fired you.
No, it's too late. I don't work here anymore.
Fine, let's try this again. You've got the job and now you're fired.
No, you offered me the job, but I never accepted. Look, I've already worked for you. It's very tedious. And now you want me back. I think it's a regressive career move.
Okay, what can we do to get you to come work for us?
A raise.
A raise.
$200 an hour.
$200 an hour. Okay, prorated to the 10 seconds you're gonna be working here, so 12 cents.
And this time I promise I won't quit.
You promise you won't quit. You promise you'll let me fire you.
If you still want to.
Oh, I'm sure I'm going to want to. So we have a deal?
Not yet. I've already been an accountant here. I feel like I've outgrown the position. I want something higher. How about junior vice president?
Junior vice president. $200 an hour or 12 cents, whichever comes first, and you promise not to quit before I have the opportunity to fire you.
That's correct.
Great. We've got the job.
I accept.
Great. Now you're fired.
Oh, you can't fire me. I'm junior vice president. I'm your boss.
What? That doesn't make sense.
And as your boss, I regret that I have to fire you.
Why are you firing me?
Well, I can't help but notice as head of personnel, you've been hiring some very strange people lately at $200 an hour for me.
What am I supposed to do without a job?
Well, we do have a new position opening up in head of personnel. Do you have any experience?
My favorite part of the video is when she takes the pen and moves the cup across the table. So there's some body language that indicates a change in behavior and perspective, right? Okay.
All right, so that's our video. Are there any, that's our presentation for today. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to unmute your mic and ask away. If you've got a question, please let me know. Otherwise, we will close up.
Hey, Jeff, this is Tony.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, just a quick question or comment. It seems to me once you're in a company, of all these skills that Mark and Walt have gone through, this would be the most important one to move up in an organization, just building rapport with the right people, having the right people like you. I think this is, again, the most important one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I definitely think it's more important than not necessarily, you can have bad skills, but if they like you and they want to hang out with you, you're going to get promoted.
Yep, agreed. Anyway, thanks, Jeff. Great presentation again by the team.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else, any questions? All right, let me, I'm sure on the wrong thing here. Hold on. So just a reminder, Career DFW, Career USA, we're putting on training 4 days a week. Hopefully you'll join us. Our upcoming programming tomorrow, we're going to talk about resumes, what recruiters look for in resumes on Resume Thursday, the first Thursday of the month. Block Alderson will be with us. Friday morning, Clayton Stockdale will be with us to talk about accountability groups, who, what, when, where, and why. So you can join us and find out all about why you should have an accountability group, what's consisting of it, where you should have it at, who should be included. So it's a great, and it's Stockdale, D-A-L-L. I'm sorry about that spelling. On Monday for LinkedIn Tuesdays, how to use LinkedIn for job hunting strategies to get results. Next Wednesday, we'll be on session number 11. We're going to talk all about informational interviewing. To me, this is the once you've learned how to use LinkedIn to find people, how do you reach out to people and how do you talk with them and what do you talk to them about? So we'll be talking about information or interviewing. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. On the Career USA YouTube channel, please click on playlist, and then at the very bottom, pick whichever list you want and click view full playlist, and then up will come a list of all the different titles and topics and dates that we've had and you can scroll down and find the one that you're interested in watching again. If you're not receiving emails about our workshops and you'd like to join our workshop, our distribution list, please send an email to Career USA, the + subscribe at groups.io. What you will get every day is the title of the day, the topic of the day, and most importantly, the Zoom link of the day. That way you'll have the Zoom link and you can immediately just click on that link and join us. Please remember, Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. Career DFW survives on donations. Please consider making one when you get your next job. So thank you very much for joining us today, everybody. We will see you hopefully later in the week. Have a great afternoon.